Good Schools for All is made possible in part by UC San Diego Extension. UC San Diego Extension has partnered with San Diego Public Library System to bring middle and high school students a series of free, in-depth, and hands-on learning courses in topics like robotics, circuits, messy science, 3D modeling, and college planning. The Library Next program started as a pilot project in 6 San Diego libraries in early 2017 and is quickly expanding to more library branches throughout the city. This STEAM-centered program is sponsored by UC San Diego Extension's pre-college programs and the San Diego Public Library. Visit www.sandiego.gov/librarynext for details. Good Schools for All is also made possible in part by Thrive Public Schools. Thrive Public Schools are charter public schools serving students in elementary, middle, and high school throughout San Diego. Thrive was named one of the top 75 schools in the nation and is celebrated by the state legislature and local officials for innovation and excellence in education. Thrive engages students through cutting-edge technology, hands-on projects, and small group teaching. Thrive students are college-prepared, career-inspired, and community-minded. Visit thriveps.org to schedule a tour and get engaged.
My mom says my neighborhood school isn't good enough.
How am I supposed to know my kids are getting the best education possible?
Welcome to Good Schools for All, a podcast from the investigative news organization Voice of San Diego.
We cut through the jargon and polarized debate to get you the news and ideas that matter. Good schools are at the heart of our democracy and economy, and we're about good schools for all kids.
We hope you'll learn and maybe teach us something. Enjoy the show.
There should be an excellent school in every community.
Hi, my name is Scott Lewis, and I'm here with my friend Laura Cohn.
Hi, Scott.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing outstanding.
I'm obviously Scott Lewis from Voice of San Diego, and Laura joins us from the Workforce Partnership.
That's right.
Trying to get the rust out of our intro here. Sorry. So I always start with a story. I got a good one.
All right, let's hear it.
So my daughter is just a couple weeks too young for the transitional kindergarten cutoff, right? We've talked about this a lot.
Yeah, frustrating.
It's if your child was lucky enough to be born, or if you were lucky enough to procreate in a certain window between September and December, then your 4-year-old can get a year of public education.
A 14th year for free.
Yes. And so this is 4-year-olds who turn 5 between September and December 2nd, right?
That's right.
Well, my daughter's like 3 weeks too late. She's too young.
Okay.
And this has been devastating for her because her entire preschool class went on.
Oh,
and
poor
so
Ruby.
all her friends, and she's a very social creature. She already had very deep relationships. And so I dropped my son off, and she's always with me, and she sees some of these girls at school, and it's just heartbreaking for her, right?
Painful, yes.
And so, like almost every time we're walking away, I get it. She's a very precocious, like very thoughtful, conscious person already, and she's just like, "Well, Dad, did you talk to the principal?" And I was like, "Yeah, we did. We've gotten a lot." And I told her, I said, "We tried to talk to everybody and really try to understand. They just say you're too young. We can't. There's no schools. We tried other schools. Everybody." And come to find out, I reassured her. I'm like, "Look, you're smart enough, and you're but it's just the way it works. There's rules." So apparently later, she was talking to my wife, and she's like, "Dad said he talked to the principal, but I don't know if he talked to the principal's boss. Did he?"
Mm.
And she said, "Well, we sent a letter and it just didn't work." And she said, "Well, how about, did he talk to the chalkboard guy?" And my wife said, "The chalkboard guy? What do you mean?" And she said, the chalkboard, did he talk to the chalkboard guy? And she says, she says, do you mean the school board guy? And she said, yeah, the school board guy.
Wow.
So that's the daughter
Scott.
of a public affairs journalist.
Absolutely.
So actually, my wife did send a couple messages, hasn't heard back from the chalkboard guy.
Oh, man.
But
Who's your chalkboard guy?
Dr. Mike McQuarrie.
Okay.
Yeah. He should check his
responded
email.
yet, huh?
Yeah. So it's a tough lesson in the harsh reality of the bureaucracy.
Yeah, because it's just not fair. It really is not fair, and little kids are acutely aware of unfairness in the world.
Yeah, they're like, well, then change the rule. It's like,
Yeah.
I know. Now, there is one cluster we found in the San Carlos area, Tierra Santa area, Patrick Henry High cluster, that is experimenting with a larger window to allow younger kids into that program. But yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say something of a very privileged life, very charmed life.
Right.
My daughter's going to be fine. But yeah, it's not fair. It's like that whole year, you're either let 4-year-olds in or you don't, I think. It's just, and it seems like a good program if they did that to help kids progress, a universal pre-K kind of
The
thing.
evaluations of it have been really impressive. Preschools can, outside of school can be great, but the kids who are just the wrong side of the birthday who go to high quality preschool compared to kids who go to transitional kindergarten do better on the traditional measures of success. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that there aren't other measures that they maybe are getting a better advantage on. But yeah, transitional kindergarten works pretty darn well.
We have a pretty good show scheduled. We have Dr. Marion Phelps from the Poway Unified School District. She is the superintendent there, new superintendent. Well, she's still a newly superintendent.
She's new. Yeah. We'll give her new.
And so we got a lot to talk to her about that. We'll do a little briefing on Poway and how that even came to be. And we got our what's working and our number of the week.
We do.
And so let's just jump in. So Poway, just this year, longtime superintendent, well, for several years, Superintendent John Collins, he resigned, left the office. He pleaded not guilty to 4 felony charges. So he's accused of misappropriating public money. For instance, they accuse him of cashing out more vacation than he had earned or deserved. So those cases are going forward. If convicted of even just one of them, he could lose a portion of his pension too, according to the state pension reform stuff. He was one of the best paid superintendents in the community. I think it helps to understand sort of what happened to him. So Poway's a really interesting situation because, of course, it was so well regarded. Regarded. 36,000 students, covers not just the city of Poway, but also the northern parts of the city of San Diego, Rancho Bernardo, and very well regarded. It also had a very innovative relationship, long talked about between teachers unions and the leadership of the school district, and Collins was a part of that. I think it helps to understand what happened to go back to 2011. So that was the year that Voice of San Diego broke a story about a capital appreciation bond that the district had taken out, where basically they borrowed about $105 million and had to agree to a deal to pay back about $1 billion for that. And basically, it's a deal where they get the money. They got the money in 2011, but then don't have to start paying it off until 2033. So it was this really strange sort of back-heavy loan. You were basically saddling these extended future generations with $1 billion debt for the chance to use $100 million now. And so after we broke that story, it became a big story, national news, even international coverage. But then the state changed the law, making it hard to do that. The grand jury came out and said that was a bad deal. The Attorney General of California said that the people who did that should have to resign. It was just a bad deal that set in motion a series of things. There was a change in the board at the county or at the Poway Unified School District.
Yeah.
And a couple of new board members really started agitating for more investigation, and they hired auditing, and it turned into one of those stories that just keeps going. There was obviously a lot of drama as well between some parents and the board and some of the board members between each other, and it got to a point of true dysfunction. The teachers union ended up siding with John Collins, was very upset about some of the things that were happening, but finally he there was this weird moment where we did this story about an edit of an audit that they had done, a self-investigation that he had like really edited himself to make look a lot better, and so these kinds of stories just kind of kept piling on each other.
Yeah.
And finally, there was an investigation in it, and it was just too much. And the school board actually terminated his job. I said earlier, he resigned. They terminated it and referred some of the issues to the district attorney, and the district attorney decided to prosecute. And then finally, there was really interesting sort of consequences after that. We did a bunch of public records requests, and I actually asked Dr. Phelps about this because they've been extremely transparent over the last several months, far more than we've ever seen from Poway Unified. And they not only turned over some documents to us, they also said in that process, it literally in somebody's drawer, they found evidence of payments to a separate special retirement account, separate from their pensions and other things that they can't find any evidence were ever approved. And so there was just a lot of things like this that they proactively are now doing their best to get out. And so I talked to Dr. Phelps about that a little bit. And again, it's this kind of strange situation where you have a super well-regarded agency,
right,
that was struggling with some intense balance intrigue at the top.
Yeah, the story as it unfolded was really hard for me to reconcile, and I'm sure a lot of other people too, including, as you said, the union, because I met John Collins a couple of times, really nice, steady-seeming guy who was overseeing a district that was, in terms of the bottom lines that we care about first, student outcomes, was really doing an amazing job. And some of the board members who ended up getting voted out as a result of that bad bond deal that they did, they also were really well-meaning. They made some bad decisions, and John Collins clearly seems to have gotten into some financial trouble that caused him to take advantage of the system. But it always was strange to me that he would be I think he was the highest paid superintendent in San Diego County for several years running.
One of the highest in the state.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. One of the highest in the state. And I never did understand, even just knowing that when this stuff was beginning to unfold, it just didn't make sense to me. So yes, things got funky at Poway.
Yeah. So just to cover the bases, one of Collins' attorneys, Victor Pippins, outside the courtroom when the district attorney's criminal charges came, said Mr. Collins is obviously disappointed, but he's resolute. He stands firm in his innocence. And now we start the process of proving that to everyone as well. In a letter he sent sort of responding to, he had been stripped of his teacher credentials. And in responding to that investigation about that potential impact of these things, he had said, there's no legitimate evidence that proves that I was in fact overpaid, nor is there proof that I was criminally negligent. Indeed, there is no proof of any actual loss to the district. And in response, the district attorney's prosecutor said he got paid for vacation he had already used. And that's as simple as their case gets. So there's, again, this is interesting as a reporter on school districts because there's often these two worlds. There's the academic world. There's the world of students struggling, students achieving, innovations in the classroom, curriculum, and just school and education in general.
Yeah.
And then there's the world of governing and management, and that area is much more similar to other government agencies, right?
Sure.
Employees, audits, these kinds of public records, stuff like that. And so I find that we're often pulled in two different directions, and doing a lot of that sort of investigative stuff. And this show, we really wanted to make sure was about the education in the classroom and things that are, and focusing on people that were struggling or not. And so I think that's what's good about this conversation with the superintendent, is that it's kind of both, right? We talk a little bit about some of the governance issues, but really heavy on the educational plans that she has.
I mean, I definitely would say, though, that a dysfunctional administration almost always has really serious ramifications in the classroom. So the tragedy of the San Ysidro School District, for example, which has struggled so much to get stability and competence at the top, is one that's really troubling me because I know it's showing up in the schools. And Sweetwater is another example where the struggles with that board really slowed down the pace of change. Now under the now they've got steady leadership, and you can see it blossoming. Mm-hmm. So usually they correlate, but in Poway, I think that just that long legacy of strength at the academic side has allowed the schools, for the most part, to withstand the trauma at the top.
Right. Well, you brought a couple of tidbits, so we have what's working this week.
Yeah, so what's working, I wanted to highlight the dual language learning programs in Chula Vista. We've talked about them before, but the national think tank New America just released a full report on them. That,
a big report. It
was really big. And so they just elevated that in 1998, the same year that Prop 227 passed, that made it really, that basically outlawed bilingual education in California schools and made it really hard to do dual language schools. That's the year that the San Diego Cooperative Charter School, down in Chula Vista, opened doing a dual language program. And over that period, when most school districts were wary of dual language programs because of the new laws and constraints surrounding them, Chula Vista opened 21 new dual language immersion programs. So now with the proposition that we passed last year, 58, I believe it was, that makes dual language possible, they're just ready to take off with it, but they already have 4,400 students enrolled in dual language programs. So it's a really, really impressive record of a school district functioning within the pretty serious constraints of public policy, but finding a way to move forward with the right thing for kids.
Yeah, the report is really good. We also talked about it in our Learning Curve newsletter Mario Graham put out last week. You can check that out at voicesandiego.org. But also, we talked for a minute about what seems to have been a shift that's occurred since that 1998 law. The law was, it barred bilingual education without a kind of proactive endorsement, right? Like you had to
parental
choose.
Permission, right?
And so it feels like what also occurred, not only did we change that law last time with the last election, but also there's been a kind of shift in the framing and branding of these programs, right? We've shifted from it being like, well, we need this dual language to support students who are struggling with English.
Yep.
And as a sort of social welfare effort, and switched the discussion to like, no, dual language and bilingual programs are actually this potential advantage. Like people will want to take it. It's like an immersion program. You get to study abroad in your neighborhood. And that's a key branding change. It's taken a weakness or a fear of something and turn it into a positive and a confident thing, right?
Yeah. I would point to two things. One is increasing recognition, last election notwithstanding, of the fact that we're functioning in a global world and that the U.S. is really out of sync with the rest of the world in the way we think about languages and the way we don't give students access to bi or multilingualism in our schools. So that's one thing. But the other thing is research. So it's a victory, honestly, for research, which researchers looked at dual language programs and proved that students who are in them, whether they're English learners or native English speakers, they end up much with huge advantages, dual bilingualism being one of them, but just your brain gets wired in a really positive, more flexible way from speaking two languages, and other academics are enhanced as well from that opportunity. So hooray for research.
Yeah. All right. And our number of the week.
The number of the week is 95%. So this came out of a report that was released by Education Trust this week about Latino education in California. And when I was listening to the report, it's a really great report. When I was listening to coverage of the report, this number stuck with me, 95%, because that's the proportion of Latino youth, so people under age 18 in California, that are born in the United States of America. They're native born, which took me by surprise. If you'd asked me before I heard that number, what percent I would guess about California Latino youth, I think I might have said something like 75% or something like that. But it's 95%, the vast majority of them. So our challenge with educating our Latino youngsters is not a challenge of them recently arriving in America from Mexico or other countries of origin. It's they're American children, and we need to get better at educating them from birth. They're our kids, from the day they're born.
The report talks about how far behind them as a group is and what things we could do about it, right?
Yeah, the test score outcomes are devastating and frustrating. So in San Diego County, in English language arts, Latino kids as a group perform 27 percentage points behind white kids, and in math, it's 29 percentage points behind, and it shouldn't be that way.
All right, let's hear from Dr. Marion Phelps.
It's a great interview.
We're joined in the Great Voice San Diego podcast studio by Dr. Marion Phelps. She's the new-ish superintendent at the Poway Unified School District. Welcome, Dr. Phelps.
Oh, welcome. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in. So let's just get to know you for a second. Where are you from? How long have you been with the district? And when did you start this new role?
Well, I started this new role in April, so I'm on my 8th month, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually originally from Orange County, and I came down to San Diego to attend UCSD and for my undergraduate, and then I worked for Scripps Health for a little bit and went back to school to become a teacher, and started teaching for San Diego Unified and was a teacher.
Where did you teach?
I taught at Doyle Elementary School, Daylord Elementary School. No, I was a principal at Daylord. At Doyle Elementary School, Erickson Elementary School. Oh my gosh. Erickson. Then I went to Scripps Ranch. I was at Dingman Elementary School.
Okay.
And then I went to Marshall Middle School in Scripps Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
So then I became a vice principal over in Miller Elementary School in Tierra Santa, and then became a principal and was a principal for 10 years at Daylord and then Zamorano Fine Arts Academy.
And then you were on the administration path at that point.
Well, after being a principal, I became then an area superintendent for San Diego Unified for almost 4 years, and then became a superintendent of Westminster School District up in Orange County. So then I went back up to Orange County.
So what years were you an area superintendent in San Diego?
In San Diego Unified, I believe it was from 2000 and, 2000 and...
Was Alan Burson the superintendent at that point?
No.
Okay.
No, I was a principal during Alan Burson's time.
Okay.
Yeah. So about 2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
what was your experience under Alan Burson and the changes that happened right after that?
When I was a principal under Alan Burson, I thought it was great. It was probably some of the best learning that we've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
I grew a lot as a educational leader, learned a lot about my leadership voice, learned a lot about it being an instructional leader during that time.
What's leadership voice?
Ensuring that we can articulate and say in a soundbite like what we believe, who we are as a leader, being able to have our leadership presence, be able to articulate our vision, our thoughts, and how we believe in what we're going to do.
And you were recruited to the superintendent role at Poway.
Yes, somewhat.
What does that mean?
Well, when I was in Westminster School District, I received outreach from local people in Poway and administrators and teachers, and then people in the San Diego County in general had asked me to consider looking at the Poway superintendent position and thought it would be a great fit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, we've done a lot of reporting on Poway, a lot from the accountability and finances side. But in this show, we've also talked a lot about the unique collaboration between the unions and the leadership at Poway. Also, just its prestige as a district. It's so well known as perhaps one of the best in the country, really. And so, it had a lot of bad news. On the other hand, it still, I think, remains this model or this ideal in some ways. So it must have been somewhat of you're walking into some pretty interesting situations. First, you have to deal with this prestige and excellence issue, which you have to maintain or improve. But then there's also this sort of cloud of suspicions and worries and problems from the previous administration. So how has it been as you started? And what was it like to walk into that?
There's certainly a lot of turmoil. There's been a lot of things to kind of sift through. But certainly because I'm not new to San Diego, I'm very familiar and have followed Poway. And as you had mentioned, Poway is been a district that has always been like a lighthouse district, in the country for a lot of educators, but a lot of students, and has done an excellent job in educating children. And then, like you said, with the cloud coming in, it's just been basically trying to see how I can bring the school culture together and to bring some unity and understanding and focus towards a common goal. So it's been interesting. It's been a lot of work, but it's challenging work, but it's good work. And I know it's the right work. So it's the right work to do for the community and for our schools. The best part of it is that all the employees share a common focus, and we all want the same thing, which is to ensure that Poway stays great. So,
yeah, I've spoken to folks in Poway all along this path, and the impression I had is that the on the ground in schools, people really stayed focused on the good practices that they were already doing, while the stuff was playing out at the high level administration level. So, what things are you doing to build trust from the school folks to the new district administration?
Well, one of the first things that I've been doing is I've been visiting every school and meeting with the staff and really meeting with them one-on-one and trying to go to every kind of venue I can to, one, let the community and the school and the staff and the employees really get to know who I am. One of the things that was really unique, I think, that I was surprised about was that I'm only the fourth superintendent Poway's ever had. I'm also the first woman and the first minority superintendent. And so I don't take that privilege lightly, and I think it's a huge honor. And so I think it's important that being only the fourth superintendent and being one of the first outsiders that were brought into the district, that our employees get to know who I am and understand what my vision is for the district and understand what are my belief systems and who am I as a leader and who is this person that's going to take Poway and try and make it a better place for everyone.
What's the story that you tell about what happened? Do you have to do a lot of mopping up of the impression of the administration and explain what happened?
No, I try not to spend any time on that because I think that the media has done a great job on that. Mm-hmm. But I think that that's not really my story to tell. For me, I believe that my role in me coming into Poway is not about, placing judgment or making judgment. It's about really how do I bring Poway back together and provide some stability, some focused leadership so that we as a district can start mending and excelling again and really be focused on a vision that allows us to start some innovative programs, that allows our teachers and our employees to have a smoother pathway, create systems and structures in the district that allow us to function more effectively as a high-level business organization.
Mm-hmm. There's still a fair amount of, though, like transparency. We've noticed, obviously, this incredible change of how hard it is to get information or to talk to people. It's much easier as you're more open. There's a certain amount of cleaning that still needs to be done. And we asked for a public records request recently, and you guys came back with, well, not only here's your records, but we also discovered that there might have been some questionable payments or compensation offered to some top managers. And so we also found that too. So here, check that out. So there's a certain level of transparency. What is going on where you feel that's important?
My whole basis of the foundation of fabric of who I am as a leader is I believe that I'm highly ethical. I believe that I'm a transparent leader. I think a lot of us throw that word around without really having a solid understanding of what does that mean to be truly transparent. For me, it's about where people forget we're public education.
Yeah.
Nothing's private, nothing's a secret. And, when I go to visit schools, I tell people that if you're afraid to call me because you're afraid to throw your principal or the director or the assistant soup under the bus, then we truly are not on the same page and having the same goal, because really it's about all of us collectively working together towards a common goal. And if we're all working towards the common goal of trying to fix the system together, then there's not really nothing to hide, right? We shouldn't have anything to hide. We're a public educational system that we're accountable to the people, and we are entrusted to do due diligence with the public's money and the public's funds. And so my belief and feeling is that if things are happening and if it is on the up and up, then people can prove it and people can show. And so I believe that if you don't bring it forward, it's going to come forward one way or another. And nothing worse than documents coming up in a different way and making it appear that the new leadership in Poway is not being transparent or in collusion with whatever happened before, or not trying to start a new chapter for the district. And we really want to make sure that we build that trust, not only just within our organization, but within our school community too.
I want to push on that a little bit too, and because it strikes me as people are missing the opportunity when they don't endorse that the way you have, in the sense of, I feel like when people in situations like this are willing to embrace vulnerability, things that might not be right or things that they need to be dealt with, then they can enroll people in the challenges a lot easier. You can, like, when you admit that there might be something that needs to be dealt with here or there, or we're struggling in this area, it's not that you're showing weakness. In fact, you're showing a kind of strength and a willingness to, grapple with vulnerabilities and have the confidence that your community is strong enough to do that. And you can actually maybe get more done than just, trying to pretend like it's all okay, right?
I think that, if I can be perfectly honest, is that when you are a high-performing organization that everyone sees as a great, high-performing district, it's a tough standard. It's a tough place to stay, right?
Yeah.
And so I think people have this fear that we don't want to look anything less than. We don't want to look like we don't want to show you our pimples or our warts, right? But the reality is that we have to shift our thinking to be around everything's changing. And are we changing to be better? And do we have the growth mindset that we're all learning and we all have things to learn and we all have ways to improve, and so, with that said, everybody says, oh, Poway's so great because, we have high achieving test scores. Well, test scores really is only one aspect of success. And, so really, do we want to continue to just say that's just one measure, and is that really the most important thing that we as Poway want to be identified for? But our vision is about college and career readiness, right? So truly, do we have programs in our system that's indicative, that support the fact that we really believe that we want our kids to be college and career ready? If we do, then we would embrace some of the technology that's going on. We would embrace providing multilingual opportunities for all kids. We would embrace some of the innovative programs and creative ways of how do we out of the box ways of bringing career into our schools. And so really, what's the evidence that supports that Poway's been doing that? And so I think that sometimes there's that fear for people to saying that, oh my gosh, we're not saying that we're so great anymore. And in fact, early on, that was one of the criticisms I think some of the board members had shared with me, is that some of the employees are worried that you're not going around saying that Poway is great. And I said, Poway is great, But it's like, how do we build on what is great to even make it even better?
Yeah.
And I think it's that changing of that mindset to understanding that we didn't just arrive. Like, you didn't hit a standard and we're done. It's like people surpass us all the time. And so it's kind of like, what are we looking for to achieve to do better things for our kids? Because certainly, we have a large percentage of our kids that are high performing in all of our schools. By the old metrics, we're over 900. But, we still have kids that are falling through the cracks. We still have gaps in our teaching and our learning, and we still have a lot of work that we need to do to make it successful for all kids. So
that's a really interesting analogy or tie-in that you made between growth mindset, which is the idea that Carol Dweck originated, that our brains are not fixed assets, that they can grow. They do grow, and they will grow. And the more we work them, the stronger they can get, sort of like a muscle. And an organization has that same ability and should embrace that it always has room to improve and places to grow. I'm really interested in, you mentioned making room for innovation in the district, and I read that at Westminster School District, you started a bunch of new magnet school programs. Poway has Design 39, which is a really well-regarded sort of combo school of choice neighborhood school, is it not? Is there any notion that maybe Poway might be looking to create new school models or models within its existing neighborhood schools moving forward?
I think what we need to do is really look at, and that's the approach, kind of what I took in Westminster. And the intent was to design a whole bunch of magnet type schools, but rather, how do we increase and improve the type of programs that we offer within that neighborhood school? So how do we improve it by looking at what does that community need? What are they asking for? And what is something that would support the needs of those children or the parents that want what's best for their kids? So, one of the things that I dream about that I would love is to be able to provide multi-language opportunities for all kids K-12. And I know that in other countries, it's a requirement that kids learn multiple languages. But here in this country, we don't do that for our children. I want to be able to find the resources and the ability that we can offer that for all kids K-12 for our children, so that by the time they hit high school, it's not like the first time that they learn how to speak Spanish or French or Chinese or whatever language. So I think it's about going to the schools and finding out what do the parents at that school feel that the school needs in order to stay on the innovative edge to making sure that their kids are successful as they articulate to middle school and high school and college and beyond.
Let me ask you about the unions and the relationship with the district. So since we last talked about that on this show, I think both the union leader and the superintendent have left. And there's new relationship there. That relationship has always been held up as a really special one, in that both sides embrace core elements of the other side, that we need to innovate, continue to grow and collaborate, but there also needs to be some level of protection and stuff like that. So is that still there? Are you continuing that? Is there changes on the horizon with that relationship?
No, it's definitely still there, but it definitely is a new relationship. The new president for the Poway Federation of Teachers she's new, and my whole leadership team almost is all new.
Yeah.
And so it's about just developing that new relationship and building that trust. But I believe it's about a belief system of each organization and what do we want, and ensuring that we have a common goal, common vision, and then making sure that we can collaborate, work together towards that common goal, and make sacrifices on both ends to do what's best for the overall organization. So we certainly are working towards that, and that's one of the things that I think has always been like a golden star of Poway, is that it does set an example, because, at most districts, it is very difficult for many times with management and leadership. It's a struggle with the different unions and bargaining groups. So, but in Poway, they are known for being very collaborative, and the employees to work very closely with management to do what's best for kids. And I think that has truly attributed to a huge part of why Poway has also been successful.
And you think that's organic now in the body? It's not something that was just a result of those leaders that were there at that time?
I believe it's organic because it's organic amongst all of the employees in the district. And I believe that when they come on board and they agree to be part of Poway, that they understand that that is the culture of Poway.
Mm-hmm.
So when we spoke to the union leader, I guess 18 months ago or so, they were rolling out a pilot of a new teacher evaluation system. It was really a nation-leading system that was developed collaboratively between the union and the school district. Has that approach evolved? Is it still there? And how's it going?
Yes, it's actually going really, really well. We've had multiple in-services and workshops and training on it in collaboration and working with the County Office of Ed. They've been conducting walking tours to different schools and doing observations together to look and be reflective practitioners. And I believe that we took a survey and received very positive feedback from the teachers.
That's amazing at a moment when trust between labor, the teachers, and management probably had been eroded, that you were able to preserve, a teacher evaluation system really depends on trust between the principal and the teachers. Do you have any sense as a new leader how that carried through, even through the erosion of trust for a while?
I think it begins with the message from the top, I think. And that's been part of my message as I've been visiting schools, is that, look, I'm approachable. I'm accessible to you. I'm not here to evaluate you or to judge you. I'm here so that we can work collaboratively to improve our work together. And so, if we can evaluate and I can serve as a coach in my role, whatever role that is that I want to help you to improve your practices. It's not about I'm your evaluator and I'm trying to do a gotcha kind of a situation. It's about, we all have to first believe that we're here for the right reasons, okay? And then from that point on, we have to all own and own our own performance and hold ourselves accountable. And after that, then it becomes the evaluator's responsibility to then hold the others accountable for what the expectations are.
Yeah, describe, Laura, real quick, the Design 39 school.
Well, I'd rather have Dr. Phelps describe it if that's all right. I haven't visited. I wish I had, but
Design 39 is, I guess, it's an amazing school, first of all. So when you walk into the school, it's very open. And so there's a lot of glass walls, open spaces for learning, very diverse learning spaces, maker spaces where children have an opportunity to build, be creative, attack learning in different ways, and be able to work collaboratively in different groups with children, different ways. And it's exciting to be on that campus. I encourage you to go visit. Everybody that goes there, they're just amazed. They're amazed at, you walk into the teacher planning room or the teacher lounge or wherever, and all across the walls you'll see paper across the walls that show teachers putting input as to design curriculum and how they're planning for lessons together and how the kids are going to learn or achieve a certain standard, and it's very fascinating to watch. But it truly takes a lot of commitment from the teachers and the staff to allow and provide that kind of learning experience for kids. But it's truly exciting to watch. We have visitors from all across the country who come and visit the school.
Let me ask you, so about that. So it's a traditional district managed school, right? And is it a magnet, or is it just an inline? Okay. So it's just a school.
It's one of our 39 schools.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so what I'm wondering is, one of the things what are the themes we keep talking about in local education is this tension between charters and district managed schools and school choice. And it's like, I feel like those broad labels it causes a conversation that's way more toxic than it has to be. But when it comes down to it, we talk about these innovations that a lot of schools at some charter schools or even some district managed schools are able to see. And then the question is like, okay, how can some of those innovations spread out? How can people adapt and adopt some of the some of the project-based learning, some of the personalized learning, some of these alternative spaces that you've talked about. So describe how that works in Poway. It's a district-managed school, but it's on this, like you said, forefront of thinking differently about the classroom. What is exactly the classroom? What are grades? What is the curriculum? And how did that happen at Poway, and how is it going to continue with all the rules that everybody says are too hard to get past?
The staff at Design 39, they use the same curriculum that all of our other schools do, but like what good teachers do, they also add to it and they embellish it. They develop some of their own, and they embellish the lessons and create enrichment opportunities for the kids. But I think having programs like that is just really about, does the district and leadership really support that kind of growth? We have pockets of that happening already in all of our other schools, but it's about really setting up a model where best practices are happening. And we're fortunate because we have a model of that in Design to 39 as a whole school, because the school was designed even structurally to look like the optimum learning kind of school. So it's really about, how do our other administrators or leadership teams or teachers recreate those opportunities within a traditional setting of a school that was built in the 1970s, right? And it is happening already in a lot of our schools. We have our administration and for example, I went to visit, I believe it was Chaparral, and the principal had created this almost like the Qualcomm Think-A-Bit lab, like mimic that, and was really excited to share that with me, to show me that it was a new makerspace that the kids were able to access and the teachers were able to share. So different principals and teachers are starting to make some of those transition and change on their own, and we have pockets of it in various different schools.
So is that right? Would you, if I went out to a school in Poway, would they say that their knowledge of Design 39 and watching that school emerge had changed their own practices? And I'm also curious to know, those 70s style structures, how large of an impediment that is to implementing some of the innovations that Design 39 has done.
I think that Design 39 has helped, but I think it's about all of us opening up our practices and basically opening up our doors so that we share what we do, so that teachers can take a little bit of that's great, and this is what I want to do, and have models that they can visit to go, oh, I get it now. I visually can see it. I visually can see how, the students interact, how they taught that lesson differently, how kids are engaged, and how the learning environment supports what kids are able to do. So, more and more, my hope is to be able to increase that throughout our schools and be able to find some resources that allow us to make some of those transformations in our schools go more quickly. And so we're currently working on that. So,
a question. So one of the things that San Diego Unified is dealing with is this real big problem in special education of just filling the spots, of managing some of the the budget cuts that they've had to do, but just filling vacancies. And one of the person that was doing that said that in Poway there's a bunch of vacancies as well of special ed classified, so teacher positions. What's going on in special education right now? Is it a real crisis in those educators? Is there need to be some kind of bigger reform to attract more, or is it just it's always going to be a hard thing to do?
I think that as the times have changed, I think that what we've all seen in education is that there's been this huge growth in the special education population. And we're finding that more kids are requiring or are having more needs. I'm not sure if that's indicative of our environment. I'm not sure if it's indicative of the changes in how we eat. There's a lot of factors that I believe that impact the health of kids and how kids learn. In some cases, there may be an over-identification of, people looking for additional supports for kids who maybe truly aren't really special education students, but parents are seeking for additional supports to ensure that they are successful in the educational environment. But certainly there is there isn't as many trained teachers, practitioners who are in that field. So certainly we all across the country are suffering from not having enough special education teachers, special education aides, or support staff to help us to meet all the needs of all of our kids. So it is a growing problem, not just in Poway and San Diego Unified, but across the country, everywhere.
So we've talked a lot on this podcast, and you read it all the time, that there's either a present or an impending teacher shortage. And we've documented a real decline in the number of candidates coming out of teacher education schools here in San Diego County and across California. Is Poway feeling any crunch like that? And if so, where are your areas of shortage and how are you tackling it?
We don't have a teacher shortage in Poway, whether it be in general education or special education. Where our shortages is with our classified employees for support staff, but in special education. But the teacher shortage, fortunately, hasn't affected Poway. I think Poway's reputation does attract some of the best and the brightest, and also, allows us to keep and we try to stay competitive. So fortunately that hasn't affected us, but I do know that it is a problem across most districts across our systems. So.
Well, is there any kind of retirement bubble facing Poway? A lot of teachers on the verge of retirement, or is that not an issue for you?
I believe that we have a bubble. I think that a lot of districts do, but to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure if that's any more normal or not normal than other districts, but we do have a large population of our educators who are on the more veteran side of the scale in Poway, because when they come, they stay, and they stay for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I do have to ask you about one other thing. So Poway Unified School District has to switch to this district elections instead of an at-large seat where all 5 school board members are elected from the same sort of ranking of the same choices. They are each going to have to represent a specific district, a specific group of neighborhoods. And that's a change that's going through, sweeping across North County and East County and other places. And now it's at Poway. What does it take to pull that off? How hard is that?
It can be very devastating for some districts. It can be very difficult because it's changing a way that, our voters voted in 5 individuals to represent them. And in Poway's case, we have 4 of them that reside in the same similar geographic area within our district. Our district's about 100 square miles big. And so what it does is that, we had to create a map that created 5 different areas that the board members that are elected will represent the schools and the constituents in that area. So you have to have 4 public meetings where you get input from the public, and then you have opportunity for the public and the board members to essentially design their own maps that they would like to recommend. And then at our last board meeting, the board members reviewed all the maps, reviewed all of the comments from the public, and then selected and determined which map that they wanted to recommend to the county for the county's approval for our district to move towards a district trustee area map.
But bottom line is some of them aren't going to make it.
Correct.
And that's probably hard.
Right. So the map that the board had selected actually has 2 of our trustees in one area. So definitely one of them will not be back. And it is difficult. It's difficult for the district because in some cases the voters won't have an opportunity to maintain or keep the people that they had previously elected to that position, and it will have to select members of the community from other parts of Poway Unified.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that pattern you described where 4 of your current board members are from a similar part of Poway, I guess that's the motivation for going to district elections, because the schools that didn't have any nearby board members, they might have felt that the board members who were there didn't know their communities, didn't know their schools as well as they might know the ones in their home neighborhood.
Yes, that's the big picture idea as far as why you want to make sure that all of the community stakeholders are represented, all the minority groups are represented in the district, all of the geographical areas are represented, all the schools are fairly represented. But from what I understand from Poway's history is that for example, we don't have any board members that represent the Rancho Bernardo area, and that the rumors are that other RB people have tried to run but haven't been able to have a seat or earn win a seat. And so this will allow, I believe this map has RB as one area that that they'll be able to elect a community member or somebody that represents Rancho Bernardo. So.
Well, Dr. Marion Phelps, thank you for coming in, and good luck. Sounds like you got a big job.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.